Last week was big for South Towns and southern tier snow, and of course a big reason for that is the fact that it's the middle of winter and there is still hardly any ice on Lake Erie. How unusual is that, and what could it mean going forward? I'm explaining in this week's Heather's Weather Wise. As of late last week, Lake Erie's total ice cover was estimated at about just 5% of the lake's surface. That is way behind the average for the date, which is 45%. If you go by water temperature readings near Buffalo, last Wednesday is the date where we should have consistently seen temperature readings of 32 degrees. But what's even more remarkable is that last winter, Lake Erie didn't freeze up on our end at all. Peak ice cover on the whole lake was just 15.9%, the second lowest since the early 1970s. The last time Lake Erie was technically frozen, that was the last week of April 2019, 697 days ago. There were some other winters where the water temperature never hit freezing near Buffalo, but not many. Here they are, and the data goes back to the early 1920s. Now, this stretch back through the 50s, it turns out that most of the winter months during that stretch had above normal temperatures, so that likely checks out. Of course, that's all interesting in itself, but I know your next question, because it was my next question too. What happened snow-wise these years with hardly any ice on Lake Erie? Well, what's really fascinating is that all but one of these seasons had below normal snowfall. A little while ago, I did some research on how much of Buffalo's snow actually comes from lake effect, and it turns out that it's only about 30% on average. So no, a wide open lake doesn't necessarily lock us into a big snow season. If the weather pattern isn't right for a frozen lake, it's probably not right for cold, snowy weather in general. But as you and I well know, the weather pattern over the last week or so has turned to favor the colder, snowier weather, and Lake Erie's temperature has slowly but steadily dropped as a response. The next 2 weeks, by the way, are on average the coldest out of the year. And for what it's worth, ice forecast models developed by NOAA show 60% ice cover in about a month's time. That's slightly more than normal for a season. So long story short, we'll be watching for some more ice to grow on Lake Erie in the coming weeks. But remember, even if a lake is 90% frozen, that open 10% can still produce lake effect. And for anyone that may still be rooting for minimal lake ice in order to get an early jump on spring, remember, last spring we had snow the second week of May. That's it for this week's Heather's Weather Wise. I'll see you next week with a new topic, but until then, remember, it's good to be a geek.